Is you want to? A1 is C.
Bonjour, I'm fine, and you? I heard you last time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For your speech about the financing of the PIDA. I'm running an investment firm based in Central Africa, in Congo, Brazzaville. And I'm currently raising $200 million fund to fund the infrastructure project in Central Africa.
Wonderful. So let's talk.
So definitely.
Sure. We're going to start this event now.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning. We're inviting everyone to take your seats, please. So, I think we'll kick off today's we'll kick off day 2 of the Dakar Financing Summit for Africa's infrastructure. I will commence by inviting panelists to the table. We have our CEO, Mrs. Nados Bekele Thomas, who's taken her seat already. I understand that the Director of Infrastructure and Energy, Kemu, will be stepping in for Commissioner Abu Zaid. Kemu, you can take the seat, please. Next. And then we have His Excellency Ambassador Horichi, Ambassador Extraordinaire, Mission of Japan to African Union. Sir, please take your seat. And we have the World Bank will not be joining us. I just got that message. And Her Excellency Commissioner for Spatial Planning and Infrastructure, ECAS, Madam Marie-Thérèse Chantal Fuller. Madam, please take the floor. And then we have the Acting Director of Private Sector Development and Finance, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, our dear brother, Robert Lisinge. Dr. Robert, please take the floor. Once again, thank you very much for joining us on the second and last day of the Dakar Financing Summit. This panel session was to hold yesterday evening, but of course, due to our timing, we had to shift it to this morning. So the first phase of PIDA, Flo, we good? We okay? I think we can remove the others because they won't be joining. Mike is not here yet. Is he joining? The World Bank is not coming. They're not coming. Yeah, Sefini. Yeah, Sefini. Yeah, it's fine. So we'll now kick off. I'll just give the context of this panel. As colleagues will know, that the first phase of PIDA was translated into the PIDA Priority Action Plan 1, which comprised a list of about 400 regional priority projects for implementation between 2012 and 2020. Under the leadership of the African Union Commission, PIDA stakeholders developed the second implementation phase of PIDA PAP 2. That's why we are here, with an implementation horizon from 2021 to 2030, which is made up of 69 projects. We heard about that yesterday, from all the 5 designated AU regions. The year 2022 marked the 10th anniversary since PIDA was officially adopted, and highlighted the importance of a comprehensive review of the first decade of PIDA implementation. With the support of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, AUD and NEPAD is undertaking a comprehensive data collection to develop the first 10-year PIDA progress report, and the report will be launched later this year. So this summit is an opportunity to reflect on what PIDA has achieved over a decade and some critical considerations moving forward. So this session is intended to review a decade of regional infrastructure development in Africa and to consider the necessary actions for facilitating PIDA implementation in the next decade. So we aim in this session to reflect on what PIDA has achieved over a decade and the critical considerations moving forward, particularly the issues encountered in the slow pace of PIDA implementation, the first phase. And secondly, to discuss how to facilitate adequate PIDA and financing to address the challenges encountered, enhance efficiency and visibility on overall PIDA performance. So I will now invite my dear brother, Director Amin Idris Adum, to do a kickoff presentation, and thereafter we'll pose the questions to our panelists as to their take on the next phase of PIDA PAP 2. Amin, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Simer. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the event this morning. Before starting, I would like to tell His Excellency, the Ambassador of Japan, say thank you to him because he changed his flight in order to be here. This event was supposed to be held yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, when we launched the PIDA program 10 years ago, can you load the presentation, please? Thank you. Yes, so 10 years ago, our objective then, we had a series of objectives then, and they were in the transport sector to build 37,000 kilometers of highways, 30,000 kilometers of railways, and add to our port capacities to 1.3 billion tons, and also to implement the project of a single African sky in the aviation industry. With regard to the power sector, the objective was to build more than 60,000 megawatts of power plants, to build power transmission lines, over 16,000 kilometers of power transmission lines. So what have we done? Since the launch of PIDA 1, African states have deployed a lot of efforts, and these efforts led to, with regard to routes, we built over 16,000 kilometers throughout the continent. For railways, we built over 4,000 kilometers, and power sector, there were over 3,500 power transmission lines that were built, and about 7,000 megawatts of new power generation. In the ICT sector also, the digital sector, we connected 17 countries with regional fiber optic cables, and 43 countries are connected with regional fiber optic cables. About 30 countries have set internet exchange points. Of course, all of these projects created thousands of jobs, decent jobs, as you can see on this chart. In our discussions yesterday, we said that one of the indicators, basic indicators of PIDA projects for us to select them is the social and economic impact, especially with regard to job creation. That was one of the indicators. So in terms of impact, you can see that. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So in terms of impact, you can see that here, in terms of hydropower generation, we had the objective, the target to reach 300 gigawatt hours by 2020, and what we achieved was 147 gigawatt hours. In terms of power transmission lines, 16,500 kilometers was the target, but we achieved, we were able to build 7,200, less than half of the target. In terms of broadband capacity, also 6 terabytes was the target, and we reached 9 terabytes, so we exceeded our target. Now, the objective of the PIDA was to increase electricity coverage also. The target was 70%. After 10 years of implementation, we are at 43%. And another objective was also to increase intra-African trade to 23%. Now we are currently at 15%. This is, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, the targets and the achievements of PIDA 1. We indicated yesterday in the discussions at the ministerial level and also at the heads of state level that the PIDA program, although its implementation has been long, we were able to achieve results that are quite significant, and we should continue, of course, in that to make progress. And for this reason, that the PIDA program 2 was launched following the positive evaluation of PIDA 1. And in PIDA 2, we indicated that we have 69 infrastructure projects. You can see on this map on the screen, in the energy sector, in the transport sector, water sector, and as well as in the digital sector. Of course, most of the investments are in the transport sector because roads and railways are expensive to build, but there are also airports, and at the second level of investments that is access to energy, and which is about 38 billion, and access to water investments are estimated at 9 billion. In the IT sector, it's about 5 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to pay attention to the presentation of the projects on to your left. You will see the distribution of projects in terms of investments. There you will have an idea of the needs at the level of each region. Now, with regard to PIDA-PAB2, we also have made progress, significant progress, and as you can see on the screen, especially in terms of project preparation. This is one of the objectives of this conference also to raise awareness among all of you and show you where we are and encourage you to support us, especially the investors in the private sector, of course, and also government authorities. So, ladies and gentlemen, that I have come to the end of my presentation, and I give the floor back to my colleague Simer, who will be putting questions to the various panel members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amin. We will now proceed with the panel discussion, and I'll kick off with the first question that I'll be posing to CEO, Madam CEO, Madam Nados Bekele Thomas. After 10 years of PIDA implementation, we're going into the 10-year anniversary. Starting now, we're moving to another decade of PIDA. As head of AUD and NEPAD, the first 10-year PIDA progress report is underway. Can you please give us your thoughts, your ideas, or reflections on what you will want to see different in the next 10 years of PIDA?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming early in the morning for this session. I think we need to be brief because almost everything has been said yesterday. So what we need to do is implementation. As you know, PIDA PAP 2, we have been committed to implement the PIDA PAP 2 program, which also takes into account, by the way, some of the work of PIDA PAP 1. This has to be done by 2030. So we have only, how many years to go? 7 years to go. Yeah. And in 7 years, we need to really complete. One of the things that Africa has to do, and what we have to do, is really fulfill our promises. And when we promise, we have to really gauge ourselves based on what we can do and what we cannot do. And I think for us, as AUDA NEPAD, the most important thing is to make sure that the work is completed by 2030, to the extent possible. We cannot say that, this is the percentage. And, we've just listened to the presentation. And yes, there is so much work done, but, there is so much work left. And Africans really are impatient. So that is number one. We have to really fulfill our promises. And in order to do that, the three things that I took from yesterday's discussion is, number one, is the fact that we need to really increase or accelerate our phase of preparation. In order to do that, one of the critical things that has been drawn to our attention is the fact that we need to really engage with investors. And we have to really craft, our feasibility studies and whatever based on what we gauge from them without compromising the whole process. Again, I say without compromising the whole process. So investors' engagement, are being close to them and making sure that we understand them is critical and very important. The second thing is to encourage African private sectors to get together and to brave into going into infrastructure. We have all what it takes, the capacity, capability. We need to get together and put our resources together. We have to learn to work together. We have to learn to work together. And therefore, this is a job that we would do with ABC, that we would do with CBN, and all this to make sure that they are really together and trying to do something meaningful. And in order to do that, we really have to strengthen our systems and mechanisms of mitigating the risk and making sure that the guarantee fund works and functions for Africans, for African private sector. So these are the things that we need to do. And I think, we have to really look at all our tools, mechanisms, and systems to make it work for Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CEO. We have, as you said, we have to fulfill the promise, accelerate project preparation, and private sector is key so that investments into PIDA Phase 2 becomes a reality. I will now ask Director Kemu. I know you're stepping in for Commissioner. So, Director, based on the reflections provided by our CEO, she highlighted What collective actions? She kept saying that we have to do it together, we have to fulfill the promise. So what collective actions do you think we will require from member states, the RECs, and all the PIDA stakeholders and partners to fulfill the promise of what our CEO has said? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simer. And I wish to convey the apologies of Her Excellency, the Commissioner, that she has been unable to participate this morning. She has another engagement, so I'm stepping in for her. I will start first, maybe, for the presentation which was made by Amin, to commend AUDA NEPAD and the PIDA stakeholders for the achievement which has been attained in the implementation of the PIDA PAP 1, and now the progress which has been made in implementation of PIDA PAP 2. Yes, we did have targets which we set ourselves to attain, and we also, have the achievements which, at some aspect, when one looks at them, will think that we did not achieve much. But one will need to put it in perspective. For example, if you put it in context, that if you are able to construct 16,000 kilometers of road, and I'll pick maybe a ballpark figure from the region I come from, to construct a kilometer of decent tarmac road will cost about $1.35 million. Now you're talking about, for 16,000 kilometers, it was almost $24 billion was invested in construction, or mobilized and invested in constructions of these roads. When you talk about railway, for example, we say 4,000 kilometers of new railway tracks was built. You also take the going rate, if I assume what the price is constructing the SGR in Tanzania and Kenya, and I'll take an average value maybe of $6 million per kilometer. It all depends on the terrain, the design, etc. That's another $24 billion invested in the 10 years just to construct this railway infrastructure. Likewise, if you talk about the transmission lines, 3,500 kilometers, that also significant investment which has been made. What I'm trying to say here is there is substantive achievement in as much as we see that it's not that high in the implementation and the financing of PIDA PAP 1. And I think this has come about in bringing up more awareness among the PIDA stakeholders in having an harmonized approach in the implementation of these regional projects. And when I'm talking about stakeholders, I mean the member states, the regional economic communities, and at the continental level, AUDA NEPAD, the AUC itself, and our partners, which we are working together. So going forward, there's a lot of optimism when it comes to the implementation of PIDA PAP 2, and this is based on the lessons which have been learned from the implementation of PIDA PAP 1. A lot have been said yesterday, today, much was covered by the remarks which were made by Your Excellency CEO yesterday, so we wouldn't wish to repeat it. But at us at the continental level, and in particular at the AUC, what we wish to see is more enhanced coordination among the PIDA stakeholders. And I mean ourselves at the continental level, coordination and collaboration with the regional economic communities, the member countries, the member states themselves, the project sponsors and owners, as well as our partners, who have joined us in this journey to implement the PIDA PAP 2. One of the challenges which we had, and I think Simer and Amin, we've worked a lot in this in the past. You're very much aware, in as much as we would have wished to accelerate and progress the implementation of PIDA, in particular PIDA PAP 1, was the issue of lack of harmonized coordination, or say, harmonized on the key objectives and activities of implementing the PIDA PAP 1, in particular for the stakeholders which have been mentioning at the continental, regional, and the national level. The other aspect, I think most of them have covered, and you've also covered them, Your Excellency, here in your reflections, issues of financing and investment and preparation. Wouldn't wish to repeat, but the point of capacity building, and in particular in mobilizing resources for project preparation, that has been covered in detail. We need to capacitate our member states, the project owners, even the regional economic communities and ourselves in mobilizing adequate financial resources required in project preparation. A figure was put yesterday, about $8 billion will be required to prepare these 69 projects in the PIDA-PAP2 list. The other thing, and I think I'll just be repeating it, but it's better to emphasize, is the issue of sharing experience. We cannot overemphasize in sharing experience. We had experience which was shared here with Egypt, how they've managed to implement some of the major infrastructure projects. Senegal, likewise. You have RECs or countries which are performing better in implementing multinational infrastructure projects. I've seen, for example, give an example of EAC, how they implement the one-stop border post. You see most of the other regions go there and learn from how they've done. So we need to encourage more this sharing of experience to accelerate the implementation of these regional infrastructure projects. And the last point I wish to make in this interest of time is, and I think you mentioned this, Your Excellency, yesterday in your remarks, is to call upon the member states, the countries, to make sure that they include these PIDA projects in their national development plans. They need to be captured also in the regional master plans, and this will help to facilitate mobilizing, domestic, private, public financial resources, which, in turn will help to mobilize the domestic and international private financing resources. So in a nutshell, Simera, maybe I wish to submit that what we see going forward, in particular in the implementation of PIDA-PAP2, is more enhanced coordination and collaboration between the PIDA stakeholders at the continental, regional, and the national level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director. I think, certainly. As you mentioned, more awareness, more coordination, particularly with our partners, and who best to have the government of Japan. First of all, Ambassador Horichi, we are quite pleased and happy that you changed your flight to be part of this session. Thank you very much for that. I know emphasize that, but we just wanted to re-emphasize it. It shows the demonstrable partnership and commitment that Japan has on the PIDA process. And just to contextualize before you come in, through the TICAD process, you always emphasize, Japan emphasizes through TICAD ownership and partnership. And we've heard our CEO talk about better coordination, better collaboration. We've had Director Kamu talk about more awareness, more coordination. And he even mentioned the work we've done on the one-stop border post. So considering the outcomes of the PIDA process, the involvement of JICA throughout the PIDA process, Ambassador, please tell us about Japan's commitments and aspirations for Africa's integration and infrastructure development. Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Senegal. Thank you, AU. Thank you, Audanepad, for organizing this and for inviting me. Today, I would like to share with you 3 points about why and how Japan wants to work with Africa. First, TICAD. And second, Japanese engagement for PIDA, and third, global governance. The first point is about Japan's partnership with Africa through TICAD process, Tokyo International Conference on African Development. Launched by Japan in 1993, TICAD is one of the oldest and the most inclusive partnership platforms with Africa. TICAD has always positioned the importance of ownership by Africa and partnership by the international community as an imperative philosophy. During the last TICAD 8 in Tunis in last August, Prime Minister Kishida renewed the determination of Japan to stand together with Africa in this hard time exacerbated by global challenges. To fulfill this commitment, Japan announced to invest $30 billion as the sum of both public and private sector financial contribution over the 3 next 3 years, with an emphasis on investment in people and the quality of growth, including infrastructure of quality. The second point focuses on the engagement of Japan towards PIDA. PIDA contributes to the African regional integration, of course, and at the same time, this could be seen as one of the alternatives to answer some of the possible questions, such as, what is the best mix or a bon mariage between what Africa already has inherently by itself and what Africa can get from the contact with outer network or outer partnerships? Finding the appropriate blend of Africans' potentials, knowledge, know-how, or way of living with that of its partners could provide a primordial proposition for all. This could be one of the challenges PIDA can respond to, in addition to its essential and ultimate objective of the continental integration and continental infrastructure development. The PIDA 10 years progress report, which Japan is supporting, will serve as a pillar to gather multi-stakeholder support from Africa itself, while enhancing ownership and partnership, and will support the promotion of African-led implementation of PIDA. I'm sure that this report prepared by Japan through JICA can be a sound basis for the further deliberation and for further concrete outcomes. The integrated corridor approach has been newly introduced as a basic principle of PIDA PAP2 since 2021, and plans are underway to support a robust regional supply chain infrastructure in the areas of transportation, water, energy, and ICT. To date, Japan has provided financial assistance of $13.7 billion from 2012 to 2020, with a view to supporting the realization of infrastructure projects in many African countries. Out of this final assistance of $13.7 billion, for the PIDA projects alone, the investment made by Japan reaches $4 billion. Sorry, I talked too much about the amount.
Sorry.
We would like to promote regional economic development, which is absolutely in line with the slogan of African Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Japan has made efforts in supporting the development of Southeast Asia through corridor development by establishing the Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity. Of course, Africa has its own context and historical past, so it's not our intention at all to bring to Africa spontaneously the Southeast Asian integration experiences. However, if you are interested in Southeast Asian integration experiences, we may humbly suggest that we share some of these experiences in order to support African endeavors to promote regional economic integration and development. Those efforts to strengthen connectivity are in line with the vision of a free and open Indochina. I'm so sorry, free and open Indo-Pacific, I'm so sorry, FOIP, in which the Indo-Pacific region will serve as a conduit between Africa and Asia. Free and open circulation and the exchange of goods, services, information, and people between Africa and Asia will heavily depend on the stability of the Indo-Pacific region on the stability and open-mindedness of the Indo-Pacific region. Let me point out one more prerequisite. Japan is also advocating and promoting sound development finance, adhering to international rules and standards as it was concurred in the last TICAD 8 in August in Tunisia. The third point that I would like to touch upon is the global governance, which is an ultimate enabler of all the projects and all the programs we aspire to achieve. There are several important components the AU is strongly promoting to nurture regional integration in Africa, such as FCFTA, industrialization, as discussed during the AU Extraordinary Summit in Niamey, and, of course, PIDA. Lacking one of these components may not help us realize the prosperity Africa we want. However, there is one underlying fundamental principle: global governance. Open, fair, transparent, and inclusive global governance is the ultimate prerequisite for all human activities. Fairness in global governance, it can be related to adherence to the rule of law and sound multilateralism, not to the rule by force or coercion. And of course, in doing so, African voices should be duly respected and reflected. In this regard, Japan has started to serve as a member of the UN Security Council since January this year. As a responsible member of the Council, Japan is determined to listen to your voices, to listen to the African voices. Avant de terminer, une petite conclusion.
Before I conclude, let me say that Japan has used the support from international community in its fight to rebuild after the Second World War. Of course, in addition to efforts from our parents and grandparents who worked to make the country prosperous, Japan was also lucky to receive support, kindness, and goodwill from the whole world. For instance, the Shinkansen, the high-speed train, emblematic of Japan, is the fruit of international support. Japan would not have achieved that alone. It is thanks to your support that we have the Shinkansen. We would now like to share that with those who are vulnerable and are facing challenges. We want to pay it forward. We have said, especially in Addis Ababa, we need African solutions to African problems. And I think that it is high time to say African solutions to global problems. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, and certainly I'm sure in PIDA PAP 2, Ambassador, we will take you on the Asian experience, on benchmarking and best practices. Thank you very much. I will now move to Her Excellency Madam Fuller, the Commissioner from ECAS. Madam, we have worked with you for many years, and I don't want to go into the history, but back 10 years ago, you were, I think, the only senior official, not to mention female senior official, that accompanied the REX journey. And we were able to, under your leadership, we were able to second 2 experts at ECAS, and you were able to also make inroads into the ECAS countries. Just to contextualize everything that has been said, Madam, there is a huge role for the regional economic communities in the second phase of PIDA, Perhaps you can give us your thoughts and ideas on how do you assess the synergies and the alignments that the PIDA projects that are sitting at the continental strategy, how will that translate into the regional strategies like the ECAS strategies into the national government plans? Our CEO has repeatedly said that in this second phase of PIDA, we should have them, all these projects should be reflected in the national plans. But how do we make that link from the continental into the regional economic communities like ECAS into the ECAS countries? Madam Fuller, you have the floor. Thank you.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le
Thank you, Director, for giving me the floor. I would like, at the outset, convey the words of apologies from His Excellency Ambassador Gilbert, Chair of the ECAS Commission, who, due to a busy agenda, could not come here personally to attend this major summit and has therefore asked me to stand in for him. I would like to thank Odan Nepad for inviting ECAS and also thank the high authorities of the Republic of Senegal for kindly hosting this event and for the warm welcome extended to the ECAS delegation. To answer your question, and I thank you for your kind words, I could say that I would set the stage and recall some of the achievements of PIDA. And in conclusion, share a few aspects which could help us to improve the performance of PIDA 2. I would say that Central Africa is a forest area with a lot of streams and countries that sometimes are faced with crisis, which somewhat hampers the implementation of infrastructure projects. However, we are still optimistic. There are still a lot of things to do. A lot of progress has been made over the past few years. We have seen, indeed, plans such as the Infrastructure Development Plan in Central Africa, which covers the whole infrastructure sector, land, air, and also maritime infrastructure. We have seen implementation of projects to ensure connectivity among the states with roads, tarmac roads between capitals. We have also seen the ECAS-CEMAC white paper on the energy sector, which help us have a whole array of projects in the sector of energy. A lot of studies have been carried out, and this is an opportunity I would like to take to call for financing so that we can implement these various projects. We have also the roadmap for renewable energy, and I am honored to announce here that the Renewable Energy Center of Central African States and energy efficacy will be inaugurated in Rwanda probably on the 10th of March. We had to postpone it due to the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit that was held in December. Now, in the ICT infrastructure sector, we have a plan, which is the consensus-based action plan to deploy electronic communications, and we have interconnection projects for broadband fiber optics and also infrastructure that should be the backbone of the digital economy with the data centers for data storage. And I'm happy to see that this is taken into account among the projects selected for Central Africa because we deplore that to date, we have not received any financing, despite the fact that we have contacted some of our traditional partners, such as the AFDB, the World Bank, and others. Now, we hope that with PIDA 2, we will make progress. We would also like to deplore the lack of substantive and consistent financing of air transport. Sometimes I travel from Cameroon to Lomé, Togo, and I take a whole day. It takes me a whole day to get to the headquarters of ECAS in Libreville, when normally through a direct flight, it would take you no more than 1 hour. So we should really lay emphasis on this sector. Allow me also, Mr. Director, to say that with regard to PIDA 1 and PIDA 2, there is a participatory process involving all states. It is the states that select the priority projects for them and entrust them to the ECAS, which is the implementing body, as it were, when it comes to studies and general coordination and fundraising. And I would like to thank ODA NEPAD, which through its project preparation fund helped us carry out a lot of studies. Some projects have already started being implemented, or some of them are even completed. I could mention the project between Cameroon and the Republic of Congo, where you can drive from Brazzaville to Yaoundé on a tarmac road that was inaugurated back in 2020-2021. And ECAS has built its first border control that will be inaugurated before the end of the first quarter 2023. We also have what we call CD13, which is the Development Corridor 13 between West Ubangi in N'Djamena and the River Congo and its Ubangi and Osanga tributaries. This is the multimodal transport infrastructure based on the financing of preparation funds provided by NEPAD. And we have to protect the Congo River Basin forest. We have to protect biodiversity. There have been crises also in some of the countries covered by the project, which has slowed down the process. But thanks to support from the African Development Bank for the Central African Republic, we have received financing to the tune of 200 billion CFA francs already signed. And Congo is not eligible to the ADF fund, so we have the BDAC financing, and the president of the AFDB is expected to come by the end of April for the laying of the foundation stones. We also have the we would also like to deplore that we do not have a bridge over the River Congo between Brazzaville and Kinshasa. I would like to reassure my dear sister that we have made some progress on that front since 2019, when the two nations, Republic of Congo and Democratic Republic of Congo, signed a bilateral agreement to entrust the structuring of this project, which will be a dual rail and road bridge to Fika 50. So we have had the selection of investors so far, because the financing will be done as a PPP. Africa 50 is doing the structuring. We have selected or shortlisted 5 investors who can then bid. Then we will have a main investor and 2 or 3 additional investors, because this is a very intensive project when it comes to financing. Now it is about going into action, and we will see the end of the tunnel with the laying of the foundation stone, hopefully. And I can assure you that the champion of infrastructure in Central Africa really makes a point of having this built. But we hope that the lady will be there when we lay the foundation stone. Now, with regard to the bridge between Bangui and Zongo, over the Ubangi River, I can tell you that we have received funding from the preparation fund of NEPAD. The studies have started. We already have the summary studies. We will move to the detailed feasibility studies, but it has to be approved by the joint technical committee, and then we will need additional financing, because the financial setup as it is does not make it possible to finance all of the studies over a linear that is more than 1,300 kilometers between Zongo and Kisangani, all the way to Bujumbura, and then with a stretch between Kisangani and Kampala. So, Madam Secretary, Executive Secretary, I would like to send you this message, and I have no doubt that as a sister, you will be supportive of us for the successful implementation of this major project, which will help link Central Africa with East Africa and Southern Africa during this era of operationalization of the Continental Free Trade Area. Now, having given these few examples, I can tell you also we also have the bridge over the Ntem River, and I have just been to Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, Malabo Bata. You know, we used the dugouts between Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon, and we've been to Yaoundé to discuss this, and the studies have been financed by the NEPAD Preparation Fund, which helped us consider and validate with the states through a technical committee last December, which led the African Development Bank to initiate the preparation mission for the financing of that infrastructure, because the project will be submitted to the board of the AFDB next September, on the 28th of September. If all the prerequisites are met, then the AFDB will have mobilized 85 billion CFA francs. And we will have also BDEAC, which can chip in to the tune of 30 billion CFA, and the European Union also, which is involved in the project. And allow me to say that it's not all a bleak picture in Africa, in Central Africa. There is indeed a silver lining. Despite the delays, we are making progress. Finally, I would like to say that when it comes to interconnection in ICT sector, we are lacking financing, and our wish is that something be done in that regard. And I'm making a call here to all the technical and financial partners attending, so that they may support ODA-NEPAD, and through ODA-NEPAD support us. And I would like to say that Central Africa does not receive enough financing, and I am making a call here so that we have a fair distribution of financial resources provided by the NEPAD agency. We would also like to have this coordination as has been requested here. We need further than coordination, we need collaboration between economic communities. I can give you one positive example. It is the cooperation between ECOWAS and ECAS, where I met my brother, the commissioner from ECOWAS, on the 3rd of November on the Cross River bridge inaugurated by the two countries, and a single border post that was also built on the Nigerian side. And I would like to call for our states to show political will so that we can make progress towards integration. And we need to give away some of our sovereignty so that we can achieve that through these single border posts, for instance, or even through the building of roads, you know. We have this area which is full of hazards. You have Boko Haram, and then you have the Ambazonians on the Cameroonian side calling to break away from Cameroon. And we are visiting those areas, and we'd like to thank AFDB for initiating this project following the settlement of the Bakassi case, the Bakassi dispute between Cameroon and Nigeria. Now, at African Union level, we should be able more and more to move towards what I would call intensification of financing in all sectors.
Transport, whether they have to do with the transport, we have to make sure that we have the same thing at the level of with energy, and that we have to make sure that the projects in the region be analyzed today, be reviewed today. And by way of conclusion, I would like to highlight the fact that ECAS is in line with the vision, with the continental vision of infrastructure and the approach of integrated corridors. And to this effect, the heads of state, they prescribed to ECAS to organize an extraordinary summit for the development of infrastructure, which will be held during the last quarter of 23. And I invite all the partners to take part to when the exact date will be known. We'll go alongside you and we'll work together with you just as all the RECs are doing. Thank you so much.
Madam Fuller, and thank you very much for giving us those insights. As I said, Madam Fuller has accompanied this journey for many, many years, and we're glad that she has been able to articulate some of the projects that we've worked on. I think I'll just transition now to Robert before I come to Michael, because Mike is going to talk about financing. But in the interest of time, Robert, I know you have repeatedly talked about better coordination 2 days ago when we had the energy session. Perhaps having listened to our CEO, to Kemu, to Madam Fuller, the ambassador of Japan, how concretely, I'm switching from the text now, how concretely can we get this coordination going? We have 7 years to go, as our CEO has said. You have the floor, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green Johnson, my friend, brother Sime. I think let me preface by saying that I like the spirit of frankness that these discussions have been taking place, right from President Macky Sall yesterday, President of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki, about the whole issue of ownership of Africa's infrastructure development, and particularly PIDA project. I want to speak to that and coordination, but in the context of partnership and PIDA. Partnership can be a good thing. Africa's infrastructure financing gap is huge. If we look PIDA only, we're talking about 160 million for 69 projects. So we need to use all sources, internal, external, public, private, and also from our partners. And partners here, I'm talking about non-African countries and non-African organizations, and in the context of regional projects, particularly PIDA project. Partnership could also be a challenge. And it would be the case if we engage with our partners, whether it's China through the Belt and Road Initiative, whether it's TICAD, Japan through TICAD, and I like what the ambassador has said. I saw the emphasis on PIDA, whether it's the EU through the Global Gateway or US-Africa partnership. It could be a challenge if we embark on developing other pipelines of projects that are different from PIDA project. That will be the case because it may distract from the implementation of PIDA process. And that is what informed ECA to work with the AUC, AUDA-NEPAD, African Development Bank, to develop the African strategic partnership strategy, which was adopted by heads of states as part of PIDA Part 2. And what are we saying in this strategy? We are saying that we spend a long time, more than 2-3 years, and effort and political capital to develop PIDA PAP2 project 69. We use clearly set criteria which were adopted through various consultative processes in Pretoria, in Kigali, in Malabo, and discussed also at the STC. And these strategies, they include inclusiveness, regional integration, economic viability, not just financial viability, and we have arrived at projects which are priority. And so the basis is that any discussion on regional infrastructure in Africa should be based, discussion with our partners should be based on PIDA PAP2 project. I think our partners are saying that they want to support international connectivity of infrastructure. That is also the same basis for PIDA. So there may not be too much necessity to develop other projects that may compete with PIDA. And if we want to have just one message in this meeting, is that our partners who want to collaborate with Africa in infrastructure development, we encourage them to go and look at the 69 projects of PIDA and identify those that they can support. We understand that not all partners, based on their priorities, would want to support all 69 PIDA projects. But a good way to start, that would be a win-win partnership with Africa, a partnership that is of mutual benefit would be our partners to leave this meeting and look at, please, our 69 projects and identify the ones that they would like to support and engage with AUDA-NEPAD and AUC to see how to move this forward. I think we see other opportunities in terms of partnerships that could support PIDA. I will just say two, and I will not take long. I think one is the African Continental Free Trade Area. Our partners are also supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area. It is trade and transport and infrastructure are mutually beneficial. If we don't have good infrastructure on the continent, we will not fully achieve the objective of the Continental Free Trade Area. ECA has done a study on the implications of the Continental Free Trade Area for infrastructure. We see that up to 61,000 kilometers of road need to be upgraded if we are to fully benefit from the Continental Free Trade Area. And some of these projects are projects of the Trans-African Highway and PIDA. And we do believe that in the context of Global Gateway, the Belt and Road Initiative, TICAD, our partners can come in and support Africa to upgrade or construct this infrastructure that will support not only PIDA, but the African Continental Free Trade Area. The second opportunity area is green financing. Most of these countries, our partners have expressed their support for green finance. Now, the way PIDA projects were selected, whether they were energy projects or rail projects, climate friendliness was one of the criteria for selecting PIDA projects. So PIDA projects, most of them automatically qualify for green financing. I think that there's an opportunity to tap into green funds. $100 billion, we say, should be devoted to green finance every year. Now we're talking about the damage and loss funds. So I think the whole issue of energy transition provides an opportunity for our partners to work with Africa to support the implementation of PIDA. So I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. You're very clear. 69 projects. All the partners, stakeholders should focus on these 69 projects. Thank you. The message is very clear. I think, Mike, I don't even know where to start because you were at STAP, MLTF, PIDA 1, now you with PIDA 2. You pretty much grew up in this work. As director of infrastructure at the ADB, and you've been the major supporter financially, how do you think we can resource and finance, as the other speakers have spoken? How do we get this financing going for PIDA PAP 2?
Thank you very much, my dear brother, and also my dear co-panelists. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the CEO of Florida.
I think, Mike,
let's try this one. Okay. CEO of NEPAD, and also the Chief Executive of ACAS and Ambassador for Japan, and my dear brother Camus and Robert, and dear participant. I think, the panelists have said it all. Yeah. PIDA is a journey, for African countries. It's the vision for us to realize the Agenda 2063, the African, continental trade agreement, and also, of course, the UN SDGs, and of course, the bank high five, which we believe is, the crystallization of all this vision that we have in Agenda 2063. So since then, the bank has been very actively, supporting this program from the inception, as you rightly mentioned, alongside with the African Union, ALDA NEPAD, and UNECA. So I think we've come a long way from PIDA 1 to PIDA 2. There's a lot of figures that have been shared yesterday about the financing on PIDA. We from the bank has provided something between 8 billion for PIDA PAP 1, and we are trying to do much more in PIDA PAP 2. So there's still a long journey for us together to actually embark on. So from African Development Bank perspective, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for many donors that are here, for private sector, for pension funds, and also for innovative financing mechanism that we can think about. One of them we discussed here yesterday is what we call the asset recycling, and the others, are how to use innovative instruments like project bonds, diaspora bonds, to crowd in massive resources from diaspora who can actually participate in the development of the continent. So from looking at the financing strategy from the PIDA PAP 2, I think we have laid out the various instruments and strategy, how we can go about this. Now the time is for action. How do we take it from there, from strategy to actually financing? And that's what I think that the action plan that comes with the financing strategy will be our roadmap going forward, where we can really leverage public sector financing, private sector, institutional, and then also very innovative financing. The Executive Secretary of ACAS, I think, made it very clear with a lot of priority projects that the Central African, the ACAS is actually pursuing. Most of them, of course, has been done with the bank help. This is our role. And Madam, I can assure you that all the projects that you mentioned are already, being supported by the bank, as you rightly said. Particularly the one that we also planned this year, the Intem, the bridge on Intem, is on our lending program. And you mentioned it will be processed sometime before the end of the year for our board of directors to approve. We're also looking at, the bridge between the two Congo. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of progress that has been made on the bridge. We are the bank with Africa 50. We're working on the structuring of this bridge to make it a PPP. And not only that, but the access road to the bridge from DRC and Brazzaville is already being financed by the bank. See, so we have prepared the project. We are financing the access road through public sector financing, and the bridge road itself will be through PPP, as you said, with Africa 50 and the African Development Bank. So that's the way to go. So we are there to provide the early preparation work, advisory work, and also financing, both public and PPP. So, it's a good demonstration effort about partnership that Robert was talking about. When we do partnership with the African Union, ALDA NEPAD, UNECA, Africa Development Bank, Africa 50, and other World Bank, Afrexim Bank, and so on, we see that we can move mountains. We can do a lot. So PIDA cannot be delivered without partnership, and I fully agree with you, Robert, and that's exactly the way to go. So, and also Central Africa region is a transit region. All the major corridors go through Central Africa. So unless we address the infrastructure deficit and bottleneck in Central Africa, we'll not be able to realize all the PIDA program. Neither will be in a position to realize the Trans-African highways, which all go through Central Africa. So therefore, the bank is very focused on bridging the gap of infrastructure in Central Africa. And we have a very good relationship with ECAS, Madame is here, to actually do that. So the project you mentioned about Nigeria and Cameroon is a strong demonstration about the collaboration between two RECs, ECOWAS and ECAS, and Nigeria and Cameroon. And so you can start seeing that the cooperation that is taking place among two RECs is actually an example to follow. And we intend to do more in other regions as well by also promoting not only regional, but also inter-regional cross-border project. So from the African Development Bank perspective, this is just the beginning, that we're now going to scale up financing to PIDA, but do it in an innovative way by crowding in institutional investors, so pension funds, insurance companies, and so on, and sovereign wealth fund, and also using our instrument to further de-risk this project. We are fully aware of the complexity of regional projects, but that's what we are set up to do. Our mandate as a development bank is to de-risk projects. Our mandate is to advise countries and to lead on initiative like this that goes across countries to enable integration and realize the Africa Continental Free Trade. So that's the perspective within which the bank is operating, and that's the vision that we have, which is crystallized in our high five, and we shall be continuing to working with all of you here to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to our CEO, Madam Bekele Thomas, for the last word before we close this panel, Madam. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Simer. Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you very much, participants. This will be just the last one before we go to the deal rooms. What is very important is to go now to the deal rooms and dig into the whole project and see, what can be done and concrete actions coming out of it in terms of financing, but in terms of commitment. And if there are questions to be asked, there will be the promoters that would be there to answer the questions. Please, 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 let's come out with concrete, results, out of these deal rooms. That's why we call them deal rooms. It's not going to be a boardroom, because boardroom is discussion. We have had enough talks now. We need action. So please, investors, private sector entities, promoters, development finance institutions, all of us, let's go there, and try to make it real, to realize, our dreams, okay? And with that, I think, we can close this session and we move on to the deal rooms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. Just before we close the session, I just want to take 15 seconds and make an observation. Something has changed in the room. It took the first financing conference 18 months. This one took 6 months, and I'll say why it changed. Then I looked around, so that means it was cut by 1/3. I looked around, and the first one, it was all men here. Now I would say about 1/3 women. I look at this podium, I see 2 powerful women. I look over here, I see Madame Diouf, a very powerful woman. So something has changed. I am convinced that the next financing summit, it will start with the deal rooms. The deals will start. So as Madam CEO has said, let's go to the deal rooms. We have strong, powerful female leaders that have driven this, and we make the deals. I will now invite Ibra to just tell us some housekeeping, because we did quite a number of changes. And I think there's a note here, Ibra, that the closing, in the afternoon we will start, I think at 2 o'clock, we have to, and then the closing will be at 6 p.m. 4 o'clock. Okay, we'll start at 4, and then the closing will be at 6 p.m. But Ibra, please announce. Thank you very much. We give the panel another. Thank you, Ibra.
Merci bien, Seigneur. Bonjour à tous.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So regarding the session on the projects, we have 4 rooms, and in each room is dedicated to the 4 PIDA priority sectors. The first room is room So I was saying the first room is for ICT room. It is boardroom number 1, 205. If you take the stairs, the first room facing the stairs is for ICT. Boardroom number 2, there is a small board there. It is dedicated to the water sector. It is room 202, still in the same hallway. Now for room number 3, which is 205, dedicated to energy, all projects relating to energy are at room 205. Now the last room, the infrastructure transportation project, boardroom number 4, the press room has been laid out for that purpose. It is not in the same hallway, so you go to the reception and the hostesses will show you around. So now in the agenda you have boardroom number 5, and if you look at all the projects enlisted, you have the projects relating to energy sector. You have energy plants. So to optimize the investors' interest, so we decided to put together all energy projects. So boardroom number 5, it is still at room number 3, room 205. Merci beaucoup.